If you have to pay more for a sugary drink, would you still buy it? An extensive global review has found that taxing sugary drinks has seen a 15% decline in sales. Dentist Dr. Rob Beagle-Howell joins me now for more on this research. Good morning, Rob, and thanks very much for being with us.
Oh, kia ora.
Kia ora. So New Zealand doesn't have a sugar tax currently, 45 countries do. But mention the word tax to Kiwis right now and they will bristle. So why do you think there should be a tax here, or is that what you think?
Well, I think the unequivocal evidence that was demonstrated in this big study that was put out by the WHO today highlights that if you put a tax or a levy on a sugary drink, obviously the price goes up and then the sales go down. So that's key. We want people to be drinking less sugary drinks because obviously it damages your teeth, makes you fat and contributes to type 2 diabetes.
So what we don't know, or what we would like to know your thoughts on that the study doesn't necessarily cover, is what impact does that then have on obesity and tooth decay?
Well, that's a very good point. And unfortunately, it takes a while for the taxes or levies to actually have an impact, to have a flow-on impact in terms of consumption and also impact on the teeth and obesity. But what we do know is that there's small data sets coming out that indicate that these sugary drink taxes actually have an impact on improving oral health, which is incredible.
How much does sugar, the sugar that we consume, how much of it comes from drinks? Because there are all sorts of foods that have sugar in it too. So where do you stop in terms of putting taxes on foods or drinks that contain sugar?
Well, that's a very good point. And the reason the Dental Association is so keen on focusing in on sugary drinks is sugary drinks are the #1 source of sugar in the New Zealand diet for those aged 0 to 30 years old. So it's a very powerful lever. And we know there's no benefit of drinking sugary drinks. Even if you're drinking juice in the morning, it will still hammer your teeth, make you fat and give you type 2 diabetes.
So we know then that people do buy fewer drinks if there's a tax on it. But do we know who is buying fewer drinks? Because if people on low incomes are still buying them, then a tax is just going to disproportionately affect those people.
Well, ideally, we want the people who are drinking the most amount of sugary drinks to actually be consuming less sugary drinks. We actually know there's very good evidence from Mexico, who put a tax on several years ago, to say that low-income consumers are actually drinking less sugary drinks, and then they're swapping those sugary drinks over to milk or water, which is a win-win situation.
Okay, so the evidence shows that it is people on low incomes, or includes people on low incomes, who are buying fewer of the drinks.
That's what some of the studies are suggesting from Mexico, yes.
Do we know how much revenue, approximately? I guess it will be different in each country, but are we talking hundreds of thousands or millions or billions of dollars of revenue that is being gained from sugar tax?
Well, it depends what country, but we've done some calculations in New Zealand, and you can raise between $50 to $100 million per year, depending on how much that tax is, whether it's a 10% or 20% tax. I think the main thing about that tax or levy is that it works. If you look over the UK example, they had this brilliant system where they had a sugary drink industry levy. So they put the onus on the industry, who actually ended up taking out 30,000 tonnes of sugar in the very first year. Consumers still bought drinks. They were just buying drinks that had less sugar in them.
Right. And what if there was a sugar tax, what would you want that revenue then to be spent on?
Well, I think we need to reiterate it's a sugary drink tax, sugary drink industry levy that we're after. A sugar tax in general could come later, but if we focus in on the sugary drink tax, that could ideally go to treating the 8,000 kids that are suffering and have to have a general anaesthetic every year to have their teeth taken out when they're asleep. We know that sugary drinks are one of the #1 risk factors for tooth decay. We also know that the #1 reason our kids go to hospital in New Zealand is to have their teeth taken out under general anaesthetic.
Wow, #1 reason.
Rob, it's Ryan here. I'm a little sceptical. Are there, in these 45 countries, is there any of them where after the tax has been introduced, people are less fat, obesity goes down?
Well, that's a very good question, Ryan. And what we need longer data. We need those taxes to be implemented to map that. But what we do know, Ryan, is that if there's more tax out there, there's less sugary drinks out in society, which means people are consuming less, which means there's less pain and suffering.
Yes, but to Mel's point, you have people who can consume, 1 or 2 sugary drinks a week or a month or whatever, and it's actually going to have a pretty minimal impact on their health. If those people cut back on their consumption and they account for the majority of the drop in consumption, then it's actually doing nothing re obesity or dental health at all. And we don't know that yet. Am I right?
Well, I think what we need to talk about, we need to distinguish the difference between individuals and a population as a whole. And what we know is that because there's so much sugar in New Zealand, we have the 3rd highest sugar consumption rate in the OECD. We also have the 3rd highest obesity rate in the Western world. That the less sugar out there, the better for society in general.
So are you saying, Rob, that it's too early to know what the change in consumption is having on our obesity rates, or on these countries' obesity rates?
On our obesity rates, yes, at the moment, but on oral health conditions, we know that these sugary drink taxes actually have a measurable impact on reducing tooth decay. So that's a very positive thing to note.
New Zealand Dental Association spokesperson for nutrition and water fluoridation, that's Dr. Rob Beagle-Hull. Thanks very much for your time this morning.